My mom looked me straight in the eye and said, "You won't be at Thanksgiving this year. Your sister's new husband thinks you'd ruin the vibe." I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just went quiet, the kind of quiet that settles in your bones when you've been misunderstood your whole damn life. But the next morning, he walked into my office. And the second he realized who I really was, where he was standing, what I actually do, he started screaming, not out of anger, but out of fear. Because the man who tried to erase me from my own family had just stepped into the one place he never expected to see me, a world he couldn't control, a world where his lies couldn't breathe, and a world where I wasn't the weak one. I was the one holding everything together. And that's when the real story began. My name is Zenon Reyes, and this is the moment my family learned the truth they'd spent years refusing to see. Before I go any further, I'd love to know you're here with me. Just drop a simple hi, or tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far my story can reach. Sometimes knowing someone is listening makes all the difference. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. And hey, if my story speaks to you, or if you've ever felt unseen in your own family, consider subscribing. It means more than you think, especially to someone who's finally ready to be heard. It was 3 days before Thanksgiving, late afternoon, and my office looked like every stereotype of a high-stakes workspace you see in movies, floor-to-ceiling glass. The Denver skyline fading into a purple haze, and 3 different teams waiting for my signature on a contract that would decide whether we broke ground in January or watch the whole project die on paper. I'm 30, executive director at Silvergate Urban Development, the guy they call when a 9-figure development is wobbling and someone needs to steady the whole thing with a pen stroke and a plan. Up here, people listen when I talk. They lean in, they take notes, they adjust budgets and timelines based on the way my voice tightens on a single word. Up here, I'm necessary. At home, I'm intense. Too much. The son who takes everything so seriously. The one who overreacts and makes things complicated when everyone else just wants to have a nice evening. I was halfway through walking our contractor and legal team through the last risk clause for the Skyline project when my phone buzzed against the table. Normally I'd ignore it, but the name on the screen made my attention fracture down the middle. Mom. I gave the team a second to read through the clause, flipped the phone over, and saw the message. Zenon, don't come to Thanksgiving this year. Damon says you make everyone feel on edge. I think it's better if you sit this one out. We'll do something another time, okay? I stared at the words long enough for them to blur. For half a second, I honestly thought it had to be a joke. Then I hit the middle of that sentence again, Damon says, and knew it wasn't. My sister's husband, who had been in our family orbit for all of what, a few months now, decided I was bad for the vibe. And my mother agreed. It hurt, but it didn't surprise me. This wasn't the first time I'd been quietly shifted to the outer ring of the family solar system. This was just the first time she'd put it in writing. My contractor cleared his throat. Everything okay, Zenon? I slid my phone face down, picked up the pen, and signed. We're good. Let's move on to the contingency schedule. On the outside, my voice didn't crack. On the inside, something did. After the meeting, I stayed in the conference room a moment longer, letting the noise of the floor filter back in, phones ringing, heels on tile, the constant hum of people who knew exactly how much money we were moving around this city. If any of them heard that text, they'd assume my family talked about me the way they did: capable, reliable, the person you want in the room when things go sideways. They don't. At home, there are 2 stars in orbit, my mom Lorraine and my sister Harper. Everything spins around how Harper feels, what Harper needs, how to keep Harper from getting upset. I came prepackaged with the label. He'll be fine, he can take care of himself, which sounds like a compliment until you realize it's just an excuse to put you at the bottom of the list. When Damon showed up handsome in that curated Instagram husband way with the right compliments for the right people, my mother practically inhaled him. He's such a gentleman, she kept saying. He really treats Harper like a queen. He knew exactly what to say to people her age. Family is everything. A man's job is to provide and protect. I just want to build something solid for us. The first time I watched him hold court at dinner a few weeks back, he sat at the head of Harper's tiny dining table talking about his important role at his company, how his team looked to him for direction. My mom lapped it up. A couple of cousins nodded like they were hearing a TED Talk. I ate my food, listened, and said almost nothing. I didn't mention Silvergate. I didn't mention Skyline Arc or the other projects with my name buried in their foundations. Somewhere along the way, my family decided I sold houses on weekends. I never bothered correcting them. It was easier to let them think I was small than to explain a world they didn't care to understand. Back upstairs at Silvergate, my day didn't stop because my mother had just disinvited me from a holiday. People still lined up at my door with questions, cost projections, permit delays, a zoning board member who suddenly wanted a different kind of favor. I moved through it all like muscle memory, but the text sat in the back of my head, a stone lodged under my tongue. At one point, my closest colleague Amir stuck his head into my office with a stack of updated financials, took one look at my face and frowned. "You look like someone just canceled Christmas." "Thanksgiving," I said before I could stop myself. "My family thinks I embarrass them." He snorted. "If they knew you're the one signing off on half this city's skyline, they'd probably build you a statue." I didn't answer. That was the problem. They didn't know because no one ever asked. By the time the floor had thinned out and the sky went from purple to black, I found myself standing alone at the glass wall, Denver sprawled out beneath me in grids of light. I thought about every time I'd tried to bridge the gap, inviting my mom to tour a site with me, offering to show Harper the models for a mixed-use project. I was oddly proud of trying to explain why certain too-good-to-be-true investments were exactly that. Every single conversation ended the same way, Mom sighing, "You always make everything so complicated, Zenon. Can't you just relax?" So I did the only thing that ever seemed to keep the peace. I put my phone in my pocket, decided not to respond to her message at all, and silently erased Thanksgiving from my calendar like I'd never been part of the plan. I told myself it was just a chair at a crowded table. Just one more holiday where my absence would make everything easier for everyone else. I thought that was where it ended. I had no idea that by agreeing to stay out of the picture, I'd just cleared the stage for something much bigger to come straight at us. I thought it would stop at one empty seat on a Thursday in November. I didn't know the truth was already on its way toward me fast. The next morning, I did what I always do when my personal life feels like it's cracking. I buried myself in numbers. We had an early strategy session for Skyline Arc with the executive team and the board's finance committee. Renderings glowed on the wall, sleek glass towers, pedestrian bridges, the kind of urban transformation cities brag about in promo videos. I walked them through phasing projected returns, risk exposure if interest rates ticked up again. Here my brain has a place to land. Every variable has a counterweight. Every question has 3 possible answers. By the time we wrapped and people started filing out, shaking my hand, talking about game-changing potential, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was the family group chat. I glanced down and saw a flood of photos. Harper had sent a shot of my mother in the kitchen, flour on her shirt, smiling over a mixing bowl. Another of Damon standing behind her, hands on her shoulders, grinning at the camera like he'd always belonged there. The counters were covered in prepped dishes, green beans, pies, a turkey already brining in some oversized container. Underneath the picture, Harper had typed, "Getting everything ready. Can't wait to see you all." And she tagged every single person in the family except me. No one noticed. No one asked, "What about Zenon?" It read like a perfectly complete picture. I stared at the image a little too long, then locked my phone and headed back to my office. That was the thing about my life downtown. I was the one people waited for. Uptown, I was the optional extra everyone had quietly deleted from the guest list. On the way down the hall, my mind slid back to the first time Damon ever walked into our lives. It was summer, one of those hot Denver evenings where the air sits heavy until the sun finally gives up. Mom had thrown a backyard barbecue so everyone can get to know your sister's boyfriend. I remember him stepping through the sliding door with a 6-pack of craft beer and a smile that had been practiced in a mirror. He made the rounds, shook hands, laughed at jokes like he'd known them all his life. When he got to me, his eyes skimmed my plain t-shirt, my watch, like he was scanning a resume without reading it. "So," he said, popping open a bottle, "Harper tells me you're in real estate." "Urban development," I corrected softly. "We handle large-scale projects." He tilted his head, pretending to be impressed. Nice man. So what, you sell condos downtown? How many can you move in a month? That enough to live on? Mom swooped in with a laugh before I bothered to answer. Zenon's just practical. He doesn't like to brag. You know how he is. Damon chuckled low and smug. I just think a man should know how to prove his worth. That's all. I stayed quiet, but I filed it away. Men who need to prove their worth usually don't have as much as they say. That pattern only got louder. A few weeks later, we were at Harper's apartment for a small dinner, just me, Mom, Harper, and Damon. He was back at it, talking about a big deal he was about to close, dropping jargon and numbers like confetti. Once this goes through, we're talking 6 figures easy, he said, cutting into his steak like he'd already cashed the check. I didn't mean to poke holes in it, it's just what my brain does. I asked, what kind of contract structure is it? Fixed rate floating. Who's holding the collateral? Damon blinked, then rattled off something that didn't match what he'd just said. When I gently pointed out the inconsistency, the room went quiet. Mom looked uncomfortable. Harper forced a smile and quickly changed the subject. Later that night, Harper texted me, "You always make everything tense. Why can't you just say congrats and let it go?" That was the night I got officially promoted to the one who ruins the mood. So when that Thanksgiving text came in, it wasn't coming out of nowhere. It was just the first time Damon's opinion of me got codified into a family decision. After she sent it, I did call my mom once before I decided to let the silence take over. She picked up, sounding rushed, like she was already bracing for a fight. "Mom," I said, "you really don't want me there." She sighed. "I just want everyone to be happy this year, Zenon. Damon feels like you judge him, and I don't want another argument at the table." "Do you ever ask why I react to certain people the way I do?" I asked. There was a long pause. "You make things hard," she said quietly. "You always see the problems in people. It puts me in a difficult position." That was the moment I realized that in her eyes, I wasn't the one who protected the family from bad choices. I was the one who made her life harder by seeing too much. Not long after that call, I stopped by Harper's place to drop off a jacket she'd left in my car. She buzzed me up, distracted, thanking me over her shoulder as she hurried back to the kitchen. On the dining table, half covered by a cookbook, was a stack of bank paperwork, rates, terms, projected schedules. When she noticed my eyes land on it, Harper quickly flipped the pages face down. "Everything okay?" I asked carefully. "Damon doesn't have you standing in for anything, does he?" Her posture snapped tight. "Not everyone is out to scam someone, Zenon," she snapped. "You deal with shady clients all day. That doesn't mean my husband is one of them. Damon is different." I let it go, but I didn't forget the way her eyes flickered when she said it. A few nights later, Mom texted me to swing by and drop off some old boxes she wanted to send to Goodwill. I drove over after work. When I got to the front door, I heard voices from the kitchen. I almost rang the bell, but the words stopped me. Harper's voice, low and tense. "I don't want Zenon making this a big deal. Damon just needs more time. He's working on it." Mom sounding torn, I know, but Zenon is smart. He'll see everything. I'm scared. I don't know whose side to be on. I stood there on the porch, keys in my hand, listening to them talk about me like I was a storm they were trying to predict. They knew I could see through Damon. They knew something was off. And instead of saying, maybe we should listen to him, they were trying to figure out how to keep me out of it long enough for whatever fantasy they were clinging to stay intact. I didn't knock. I turned around, walked back to my car, and took the boxes home instead. That night, alone on my couch with the city lights flickering through my blinds, I laid it out in my head as cleanly as any project plan. In the office, my job is to find what's wrong before it collapses and costs everyone everything. People pay me to point at cracks and say, "Fix this now or it will break later." At home, those same instincts make me the villain. In their story, I'm the brother who doesn't know when to shut up, the son who can't just let people be happy, the guy who always has to be right. They'd written that role for me a long time ago. I'd just never agreed to play it. Not fully. Staring at my dark TV screen, I realized something sooner or later I was going to have to choose. Either I'd keep my mouth shut and let them build their lives on someone else's lies, or I'd step into the role they feared most and say exactly what I saw, no matter how much it broke the illusion. They'd cast me as the problem years ago. I hadn't signed that script yet. But the day was coming when I'd either have to rip it up or perform it all the way through, and none of us were ready for what that would look like. By noon the next day, the office was buzzing with back-to-back meetings, final reviews, and a deadline sitting on my desk like a weight. I tried drowning myself in the rhythm sign, this approved, that rerun projections, but underneath the noise, the message about Thanksgiving kept circling like a loose wire brushing against metal. Then an email from legal came in a summary of private applicants seeking early-stage investment through Silvergate's individual partnership program. Normally, I scanned the list quickly, flagged a few, deleted the rest. But halfway down the page, one name froze me mid-scroll. Damon Clay. Listed as co-founder of a startup whose name I recognized in the vaguest, most suspicious way. Occupation inflated. Address listed as Harper's apartment, not his parents' home. Under the co-borrower section, the space meant for a spouse's information sat empty, but the system had automatically inserted a note, additional household signature needed. My chest tightened, not in panic, but in recognition. The stack of bank papers on Harper's table, her tense expression, the uneasiness I couldn't yet name. I clicked on the profile, scanned the basic financials, then stepped out of my office and went straight to legal. "What's the story with Clay?" I asked. The department head shrugged. "Risky candidate. Debt flags all over. Startup paperwork is shaky. Normally we'd reject early, but he insisted he had connections here. You're putting the file in front of the investment board." "Not yet. Should we?" I weighed my words, kept my voice neutral. "No. Leave it off the agenda. Keep it in the inactive file for now." I didn't explain why. I didn't say he was my brother-in-law. I walked out with my pulse climbing slowly, steadily. That evening I met a friend from college, Cole, who now worked at a boutique investment firm downtown. We'd planned a quick catch-up, nothing serious. But halfway through a beer, he leaned in and asked, "Hey, Zenon, random question. That guy Damon Clay, is he related to you?" The question hit like a small spark finding dry wood. Why, I asked, keeping my tone even. "Oh, nothing dramatic," Cole said. "He just pitched us last week. Tech startup, scaling, all that." He rolled his eyes, very rehearsed. "But here's the thing," he kept hinting his wife would co-sign the loan if needed. Said she had excellent credit, and it would make processing faster. My jaw tightened. I didn't react outwardly, but inside the pieces snapped into alignment. Damon wasn't talking big. He was desperate, and he wasn't just looking for investors. He was looking for someone to carry the financial risk for him, someone like Harper. On the drive home, I took the long way. Snow had started to drift across the road, catching in the streetlights like dust. I passed my mother's neighborhood, slowed near the familiar turn, then kept driving. I couldn't decide what scared me more, saying something and being accused of jealousy, or staying silent and letting Harper walk straight into a trap she didn't even know existed. I thought of Mom's words. "You always make things complicated." I wondered if she ever considered that maybe things were already complicated and I was just the only one willing to see it. That night around 9, Mom called. Her voice wavered in a way that made my stomach clench. "Zenon," she said, "has Harper ever mentioned financial things to you?" "Not really." Why, Mom hesitated. "Damon's been talking a lot about making a big move before he turns 35. He says they need to take a leap together, and Harper tries to act excited, but she's been so tense lately. She barely sleeps." I stood in the dark of my kitchen, one hand pressed to the edge of the counter. "Mom," I asked carefully, "what exactly are you worried about?" She took a shaky breath. "If a man asks his wife to put her name on a loan because she has good credit, is that normal?" I closed my eyes. There were 100 things I wanted to say, most of them loud, but I forced myself to stay calm. "It's not normal," I said softly, "and it's not safe." She didn't respond right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. I thought so. Then she changed the subject like she was scared the truth might become too real if she lingered on it. When the call ended, I sat down and stared at the wall for a long time. Thanksgiving was in a few days. I picked up my phone, typed out, "Mom, I'm coming anyway." Then I deleted it. If I showed up, everything would explode. If I stayed out of the way, I could watch Listen figure out what Damon was planning. It was the colder choice, but it felt necessary. The next morning, I tried to lose myself in work. I was in the middle of a budget review when my assistant knocked, pale and unsure. "Zenon," she whispered, "there's a man outside. He says he needs to see you. He's not leaving. Name Damon Clay." I lifted my eyes toward the glass wall of my office. He stood there, face-flushed collar, crooked hands trembling slightly. And when he saw the Silvergate logo behind my chair, something in his expression cracked. That was the moment I understood Damon wasn't here for an appointment or an opportunity. He was here because his plans were collapsing faster than he could rebuild them. And because I was the one person he couldn't afford to have watching too closely. Damon walked into my office like a man shoved toward a cliff, angry on the surface, terrified underneath. He stopped just past the doorway, eyes darting from the skyline behind me to the Silvergate emblem etched in glass across the far wall. I watched the realization hit him piece by piece like ice cracking. He had never imagined I worked somewhere like this. He had never imagined I could outrank him. He had certainly never imagined I would be the one he'd have to beg. My staff slowed their typing, their conversations stalled. A grown man barging into an executive floor always draws attention, especially one sweating through a button-down he'd probably ironed twice before walking in. I stood from my chair. "Damon," I said evenly, "what are you doing here?" He tried to straighten his shirt, tried to regain that easy charisma he always performed at family dinners. "I thought we could talk. About an opportunity. Something good for both of us." His voice wobbled. I gestured toward a chair. "Sit." He didn't. He stayed standing like sitting would confirm the hierarchy he had just discovered. "You work here?" he asked, stunned. "Like?" "In this office I oversee 3 divisions," I said. "So yes, I work here." His throat bobbed. "Harper told me you did real estate stuff. I thought you did rentals. You assumed." The color drained from his face. For months he'd talked down to me, corrected me, made little comments about men needing to prove themselves. Now he was staring at a world built partly on my signature. He finally lowered himself into the chair, hands clasping and unclasping. "Look," he said, "I know there's been tension, but we're family now, and family should help each other." "Help," I repeated. "Is that what this is?" He rushed the words out. "I have a business pitch. It's solid. I just need someone with vision to see it. Someone who believes in the future." His hands shook as he pulled a folder from his bag. I recognized the pitch deck immediately, same structure as the one in Silvergate's system, except now padded with glossy, unnecessary pages meant to disguise the gaps. And tucked between the papers were forms I had never seen before, financial documents that mentioned Harper's household income. He caught me looking. He yanked them back too fast. My voice stayed level. "You're not getting investment from Silvergate." His reaction was instant and explosive. He shot to his feet. "You don't get to say that. You don't get to shut the door on me. I'm Harper's husband." Conversations on the floor stopped entirely. Heads turned. My assistant froze in the doorway, unsure whether to intervene. Damon realized eyes were on him. His face twisted, confusion and humiliation colliding. "You're enjoying this," he hissed. "You've always judged me." "You judge yourself," I said quietly. "I'm just standing here." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing like a trapped animal. "You don't understand. This deal, it needs to happen. If I can just get one loan, everything will straighten out." I nodded toward the pages he'd been hiding. "That why you're trying to put it under Harper's name?" His shoulders jerked. "It's just paperwork. She'll sign it. She knows what I'm building." My voice sharpened for the first time. "She doesn't know what you're hiding." Damon stopped moving, just froze, eyes flicking toward the glass wall, the people watching the reality he couldn't escape anymore. Then he snapped. "If you show up at Thanksgiving," he spat, "everything I'm working for will collapse." He said it like a confession ripped out too fast to stop, My pulse slowed. So that was it. He didn't care about me ruining a holiday. He cared about me being in the same room when he tried to push Harper into signing whatever financial trap he'd prepared. I stepped toward the door and signaled to my assistant. "Call security," I said. "Have them escort him out." Damon's bravado shattered instantly. His voice cracked. "If Harper finds out, I'm dead." He meant the financial truth, not the outburst. He knew it. I knew it. My staff knew it. Security arrived firm but polite and walked him toward the elevators. He didn't look back. When the door shut behind him, the entire floor exhaled. I returned to my desk, opened the Silvergate application file he'd submitted, and stared at the red text stamped across the bottom, spouse signature required for release of funds. My jaw clenched. Damon didn't fear me. He feared the timing. He feared me walking into Thanksgiving before he got Harper's signature. And now that he'd seen where I worked, now that he knew what I knew, he feared he was running out of time. I closed the file and leaned back in my chair, the truth settling like a stone in my stomach. He wasn't trying to keep me away from Thanksgiving to protect the family mood. He was trying to keep me away so he could push Harper into something irreversible. And whether I liked it or not, he'd just brought the fight straight to my door. By late afternoon, the office lights had shifted from bright white to the softer glow that comes when the day is winding down. But the real decisions are just starting. I had almost convinced myself that Damon's meltdown in my office was the peak of the chaos until my assistant knocked and handed me a sealed envelope from legal. "Came through internal routing," she said. "Marked confidential." I opened it, expecting another update on a project. Instead, the first page hit me like a cold slap. Background investigation notes. Debt histories, delinquencies. A startup dissolution stamped with federal penalties. At the bottom in small black print sat a note that hollowed my chest. Request initiated by El Reyes. My mother. My mother had dug into Damon before I did. My mother, the same woman who told me I misread people and made everything complicated, had run a background check on her son-in-law behind his back. And she hadn't said a word to me. I flipped through the pages slowly, each line revealing a version of Damon that had nothing to do with the polished man who charmed his way through family dinners. He owed money in 3 different states. He had taken out high-interest personal loans from companies known for predatory lending. His so-called tech startup wasn't pivoting or rebuilding, it had been shut down for tax violations. And then the part that made my stomach knot: a loan application listing Harper's name as co-borrower. Signature line empty. A note from the lender. Borrower insists spouse will sign after holiday weekend. Thanksgiving. He planned to pitch the paperwork during Thanksgiving. I sat there for a long moment, gripping the folder until the edges bent. When I finally picked up the phone and called Mom, I wasn't angry. I was tired. "Why didn't you tell me you investigated Damon?" I asked the moment she answered. She sucked in a breath like she'd been caught stealing. "I didn't know what to do," she whispered. "He's always with Harper. I couldn't just ask her questions without causing a fight. So you kept it from me." Silence stretched long enough to sting. "Zenon," she said quietly, "you get so intense when you're upset. I didn't want you making everything worse." There it was, the wound that never healed. She trusted Damon more than she trusted me. Or maybe she just feared my reaction more than his actions. I ended the call before my voice could harden. I wasn't angry at her, not truly. I was angry that she still saw me as the threat when the real danger had been sleeping under her roof for months. Later that evening, Harper texted me. Not to check on me after the chaos at my office. Not to ask why Damon had shown up there. Instead, "Why did you humiliate Damon today? The whole family is talking about it." My fingers curled around my phone. "He humiliated himself," I typed. Harper responded instantly. "You don't have to protect us by attacking him. He's my husband." I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have words, because none of them would land. She wasn't ready to hear the truth. Not yet. I sat alone in my apartment, the folder open on my coffee table, the Denver skyline flickering behind me through the window. Images flashed through my mind one by one. Harper hiding bank papers, Mom whispering she didn't know whose side to be on, Damon pitching investors with desperation in his voice, and Damon screaming in my office when he realized I wasn't the weak link he thought I was. All the signs had been there, and every one of them pointed in the same direction. Harper was about to be pulled into something she wouldn't escape from. I flipped to the last page of the file again, rereading the time-stamped email Damon had sent to a private lender. We will have spousal signature by Thursday afternoon. Thursday, Thanksgiving. He wasn't planning a holiday, he was planning a transaction. And Harper was the collateral. I closed the folder with a sharp, decisive sound. If I stayed quiet, Harper would sign. If I showed up, chaos would break loose. But if chaos was the only thing standing between my sister and a financial noose, then chaos was exactly what I was willing to deliver. As I left the office that evening, the building empty and the winter air biting at my lungs, one thought settled with absolute clarity. To protect my family, I would have to show up exactly where they didn't want me, right in the middle of Thanksgiving. Aurora was quiet when I pulled into Harper's neighborhood that night, the cold settling thickly over the houses like an early winter warning. I sat in my car for a full minute, gripping the folder in my lap, feeling the weight of every page inside it. Then I stepped out and walked toward her door. I knocked once. Damon opened it. The second he saw me, the blood drained from his face. "You can't be here," he hissed, planting himself in the doorway. "We're having dinner." I lifted the envelope just enough for him to see the tab. "Move, or Harper opens this." His jaw twitched. For a moment he didn't breathe. Then he stepped back. "You don't understand," he whispered. "I just need time." He wasn't pleading for his business. He was pleading for his secret. Harper's voice floated from the kitchen. "Who is it?" When she walked out and saw me standing in her living room, her smile faltered. Then she looked at Damon, sweating, jittery, backed into a corner, and her face changed. "What's going on?" she asked. "Zenon just showed up to start trouble," Damon said quickly. Too quickly. His voice cracked around the edges. Harper's eyes narrowed. She wasn't stupid. She could smell fear when she heard it. "Let him talk," she said. Harper Damon snapped, "This is between us." She didn't move, so he lunged toward me, reaching for the envelope like he could snatch back the truth. I stepped back in time and Harper yelled a sharp, raw sound I hadn't heard since we were kids. "Damon, stop." He froze, stunned. Harper never raised her voice. Not to him. Not to anyone. I'd seen her handle fights, breakups, disappointments, but never like this. I spoke quietly. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to make sure you're safe." Harper's shoulders tightened. Safe from what? I walked to the kitchen table and placed the folder on the wood. "From this." Damon lunged again, but Harper thrust an arm out to block him. "Don't." Her voice shook. "Let me see." I opened the folder and slid the pages toward her. "These are his loans," I said softly. "These are the debts. This is the company he told everyone was about to explode. And this," I tapped the co-borrower form with her name printed clearly beneath his, "is the loan he submitted under your household income." Harper stared at the page as if it were written in another language. "Damon, you told me it was just a few small forms." "It is." He insisted, edging closer. "They exaggerated." "Don't lie," I said. For a split second, Damon's expression snapped open, revealing the panic underneath. He slammed his fist into the cabinet so hard the dishes rattled. Harper flinched. I stepped between them instinctively. "You need to calm down," I said, my voice low. Damon's chest rose and fell in violent waves. He wasn't thinking. He wasn't stable. Harper whispered, "Zenon. He asked me to sign something last week. He said it was for taxes." The air thinned. "Taxes," I repeated. "It was a loan application." Harper looked back and forth between us, horror dawning slowly. She turned away, muttering, "I need a second." That second ended the moment she opened the drawer Damon always kept locked. Papers spilled inside, contracts, loan drafts, letters from creditors. and near the top a printed agreement with a highlighted line, "Spouse signature required." Harper lifted it like it burned. "You are going to make me sign this on Thanksgiving." Damon's voice cracked. "I needed help." "You needed a way out," I shot back. "And you decided Harper would be your escape route." Harper straightened her breath, shaking eyes glossy but steady. "Get out." Damon blinked. "What, you don't live here tonight?" He took a step toward her. "Harper, wait," I said, "get out." The finality in her voice stunned even me. Damon looked around the room as if searching for someone to agree with him, but there was no one. No illusion left to hide behind. He grabbed his coat and left without another word. The door slammed so hard the frame rattled. Harper stood in the silence that followed, one hand still holding the document like it was a fragment of a life she'd just lost. Then she broke. Not loudly, quietly, almost motionless, tears slipping down her face as if she didn't want to disturb anyone even in her pain. I placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'm here," I said. "But this isn't over. Not for any of us." She nodded, leaning into me, not because I'd won, but because she finally saw what I'd been trying to protect her from. When I walked out later that night, cold air biting at my face, a single thought echoed through me with unshakable clarity. I had stopped Harper from signing away her future, but tomorrow I would have to stop Damon from dragging the rest of our family down with him. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and bright, the kind of Colorado morning where the sun looks warm, but the air cuts straight through you. I stood in front of my closet longer than I should have, not because I cared what I wore, but because I needed a moment to steady my breathing. After everything that happened the night before at Harper's house, the shouting, the panic, the look on my sister's face when she realized who she'd married, I knew exactly why I was going to show up at my mother's door whether I was wanted or not. This wasn't about pride, or the invitation, or the insult of being told I would ruin the vibe. It was about protecting the one person who still didn't fully understand how close she'd come to signing away her entire future. This isn't a victory march, I told myself as I locked my apartment door. This is a responsibility. When I pushed open my mother's front door, the house was alive, pots clattering, people laughing, the smell of roasted turkey filling every hallway. And then everything stopped. Forks paused midair. Conversations died in fragments. My mother stood at the kitchen counter with a carving knife, eyes widening, mouth falling open like she'd seen a ghost. Harper, standing beside her, froze completely. A few cousins whispered under their breath. I stepped inside, closing the door gently behind me. Mom hurried toward me, gripping my arm with trembling fingers. "Zenon, what are you doing here? I thought we talked about this. I don't want today to turn into an argument." Her voice was small, almost pleading. I looked at her calmly. I didn't come to argue. Something in my tone made her flinch, a quiet certainty she didn't recognize or maybe hadn't expected from me. Before she could ask more, the back door swung open. Damon walked in from the patio, cheeks pink from the cold. He didn't see me at first. But when he did, his entire face collapsed, relief, fear, anger, desperation tangled together in one sharp movement. Then he pulled himself up straight, ready to perform. "I just want everyone to hear the truth," he announced, loud enough for the entire living room to turn. "Zenon threatened me last night. He's trying to turn my wife against me." A murmur ran through the room. People looked at me, some confused, some already convinced by the tremble in Damon's voice. I'd been misunderstood my whole life, so the suspicion didn't surprise me, but the boldness of his lie did. Harper took a step forward, still shaken from the night before, her voice barely steady. "Zenon, I don't want things to get worse than they already are." Damon seized the moment, grabbing her hand dramatically. "See, I'm just trying to protect my family." A few aunts nodded sympathetically. I stood still, letting the storm swirl around me. This was the part where for years I was expected to fold, to step back, to apologize, to swallow the narrative given to me. Not today. I turned to my mother. "Mom," I said softly, "why didn't you tell me what you found in the file you requested?" The room fell silent. Mom's hands began shaking. She looked from me to Harper, then back again. "Zenon." Her voice cracked. "You weren't supposed to know about that. But you did investigate him," I said. "Didn't you?" She nodded slowly, ashamed and terrified at the same time. "I had to," she whispered. Something felt wrong. Damon's expression went pale. Mom had never mentioned her suspicions to him. Harper's eyes filled with confusion, and the room, suddenly far more interested, leaned in. I reached into my coat and placed the envelope onto the dining table. This, I said, is the file Damon submitted to potential investors, and it's only part of the story. Damon lunged forward instantly. Don't listen to him. He's been trying to sabotage me for months. His voice cracked into a high, uncontrolled pitch that made several relatives recoil. Harper pulled her hand from his grasp. Damon, stop. Just that word stopped him cold, and then came the moment that split the room clean in half. One of my uncles, who had always been more glass of whiskey than gossip, cleared his throat and said, Actually, Damon asked me last week if I'd consider co-signing a loan for him. Harper turned fully to Damon. Her chest rose and fell in one sharp, trembling breath. For the first time all morning, she wasn't confused. She was beginning to understand. Zenon, she said, without looking away from her husband, opened the file. All of it. This time no one interrupted, no one defended, no one covered for him. I lifted the folder, exhaling once before I spoke. Damon scheduled a loan meeting for this afternoon, I said. He planned to pressure Harper into signing. Damon shouted something incoherent, but no one listened. Harper stepped away from him, her face hollowing as realization settled deep. I hadn't come to ruin Thanksgiving. I'd come to save it. There's no turning back now, I thought, as the room braced for the truth that had chased us all to this moment. And that was where the chapter ended, not with shouting, not with a fight, but with silence. The kind that comes right before everything breaks open. I stood at the center of the living room, folder in hand, the whole family circling around as though we'd gathered for a trial. No one planned, but everyone knew was overdue. The lights were warm, the turkey was cooling, and not a single person moved. I opened the folder and read, not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with a heaviness that came from knowing this would hurt everyone in the room, including the people I loved most. Damon's credit cards are months past due. He owes money in 3 states. He took out high-interest loans from private lenders. His startup didn't pivot. It folded because he stopped paying taxes. A few gasps broke the silence. Damon sank to his knees, hands gripping his hair. I kept going. And here, this is the form where he listed Harper as co-borrower, signature pending. Harper brought a hand to her mouth, her breaths turning short and sharp as I continued. And the lender notes he would have the signature by this afternoon. That was when Damon broke completely. I just needed one more chance, he cried, voice cracking. If Harper signed, I could clear the old debt. I could start over. Harper stumbled backward like the words were physical blows. Did you ever love me? She whispered. Or did you just love what my signature could buy you? Damon's mouth opened, but no words came out. And his silence, his terrible, guilty silence, told her everything. My mother stepped toward me, tears filling her eyes. Zenon, she said, her voice trembling. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. I should have trusted you. She touched my face gently the way she used to when I was little. You weren't the problem. You never were. The apology cut deeper than any insult she'd ever given me because it was real. It was overdue. And it meant everything. But Damon wasn't done clawing for a lifeline. He wants to destroy me, he screamed, pointing at me. He's jealous, he hates me. Harper turned to him slowly. No, she said. I was the one who didn't want to see the truth. That's on me. Her voice steadied. But everything you've done, that's on you. She walked outside without a word. A moment later, she returned with a stack of documents she'd found inside Damon's car, papers I hadn't seen yet. She dropped them on the table. The amounts were higher. The dates were more recent, and they all required her signature. He was planning to trap her twice in the same day. The room erupted in outrage. Someone swore under their breath. Someone else muttered, "How could he do that?" Damon stopped defending himself. He just stared at the papers, defeated. Harper straightened, wiping her face with the back of her hand. We're done, she said calmly. I'm filing for divorce. Damon staggered to his feet, reaching for her. but no one allowed him near her, not anymore. Not after everything. He left the house without looking back, the door slamming behind him like the final note of a long, exhausting song. Silence lingered for several seconds before my mother stepped closer and wrapped her arms around me. "We owe you so much," she whispered. "And we've treated you so poorly." One by one, family members approached, some offering apologies, some simply touching my shoulder with a quiet nod. Harper hugged me last, burying her face in my shoulder. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she said, "even when I didn't believe you." Later, when the food was finally served and the house breathed again, I sat at the table, my seat not empty this time, not held for someone else, not excluded. Surrounded by people who finally understood me, I felt something settle inside me. Not triumph, not revenge, but peace. I looked around and thought I didn't come here to win. I came here to protect the people I loved. And the most powerful justice is sometimes nothing more than that, choosing to sit at the same table where you were once unwelcome, now claimed with quiet dignity. And for the first time in years, Thanksgiving finally felt like home. The house had finally quieted down, the last plates stacked near the sink, the laughter fading into a soft afterglow. For the first time in years, I felt the rare, fragile warmth of belonging curling around the edges of my chest. Harper sat beside Mom, their shoulders touching, both exhausted but lighter, as if a weight neither of them could name had finally been lifted. I stayed a little longer, helping clean, wiping counters, stacking leftovers, not because anyone asked, but because the night felt too full to leave abruptly. When I finally walked out into the cold, the air smelled of pine and distant chimney smoke. The neighborhood was still, porch lights glowing like low lanterns in the dark. I should have felt relieved, proud even. I had stopped Damon, protected Harper, and helped my family see through the fog they'd lived in for months. But the moment I pulled out of the driveway, something inside me tightened again. Not fear, not guilt. Something closer to unease. Like I had stepped away too soon. Like the storm hadn't finished forming. By the time I reached my apartment downtown, the city lights felt brighter, almost intrusive. I sat in the dark of my living room for a while, staring out at Denver's grid of glowing streets, replaying everything: Harper's trembling voice, Mom's apology, Damon's collapse. And beneath all that, a quieter truth pulsing just below the surface. People like Damon don't disappear quietly. Not when they're cornered. Not when they're desperate. I didn't want to admit that thought, not tonight. Tonight was supposed to be the first calm breath after months of tension. But something in me refused to relax. The instinct that had saved my career more than once, the same instinct that told me Damon was lying from the very first dinner, was now whispering that this wasn't over. I tried to sleep anyway. Around 2 a.m., I gave up pacing the kitchen with a glass of cold water. The silence felt wrong, too heavy, too alert. I checked my phone once, twice, 3 times, no messages from Harper. None from Mom. None from anyone. And then, at 2:37 a.m., my phone buzzed once. A single message from Harper. "Are you awake?" My heartbeat kicked up. I typed back, "Yes. What's going on?" No response. For a full 90 seconds, nothing. Then another message appeared. "Mom just got a call. Damon isn't at his friend's place like he said." A third message followed before I could reply. "His car is gone." I grabbed my keys instantly. The calm from earlier evaporated like it had never existed. My instincts sharpened, every sense turning cold and precise. I didn't bother turning off the lights or grabbing a jacket. I just locked the door behind me and headed straight for the parking garage. The roads were empty, the city feeling abandoned, hollowed out by the holiday. My mind raced through every possibility. Damon drunk, Damon angry, Damon desperate, Damon needing to reclaim control over something, anything, after losing everything in one night. People like him didn't let go. People like him clung tighter. As I turned onto the freeway ramp toward Aurora, my phone rang. Mom. Her voice was thin, trembling. "Zenon," she whispered. "He called me." My grip on the steering wheel tightened. "What did he say?" She swallowed audibly. "He said he needed to fix things, that Harper should hear him out. He sounded strange, not angry, just broken. Did he say where he is? No. He hung up before I could ask. Don't let Harper be alone, I said quickly. I'm on my way. Mom hesitated. Zenon. He blamed you. I took a slow breath. I know. No, she said, voice breaking. He said he wants to talk to you. Only you. That stopped me. Damon wanting to talk to me meant one thing: his sense of threat had shifted from Harper to me, because now I was the one who had pulled off his mask in front of everyone. I'll handle it, I told her. Keep the doors locked. Don't let Harper answer anything. When I arrived at Mom's street, every house was dark except hers. Lights blazed through every window. She was waiting at the door, wrapped in a sweater, eyes swollen from crying. Harper stood behind her, arms crossed tightly over her chest. The moment I stepped inside, Mom whispered, I'm scared. I know, I replied. But nothing's going to happen to either of you. Harper stepped closer, her voice small. He wasn't supposed to be like this, Zenon. He wasn't supposed to be dangerous. I met her eyes. He's not thinking clearly. Losing control is the only thing he fears more than being seen. She nodded slowly, wiping tears with the back of her hand. Mom clutched my arm. What do we do? I opened my mouth to answer, but a sharp knock hit the door. All three of us froze. Mom whispered, Zenon, is that I motioned for them to stay back. My pulse hammered, but my mind was clear. I walked to the door quietly, stepping to the side instead of standing directly in front of it. Who is it? I called out. Silence. Then a familiar voice, low, unsteady, exhausted. Zenon. It's me. I felt Mom tense behind me. Harper's breath caught. Damon's voice continued, softer than I'd ever heard it. I'm not here to fight. I swear. I need to talk to you. I didn't open the door. What do you want? A pause. Just a conversation. Another pause. I'm standing here alone. No tricks, no yelling. Just me. I exhaled slowly, pressing my forehead to the cool wood of the door. Everything in my body said danger. Everything in my mind said caution. And yet something deeper whispered that I couldn't walk away, not yet. Not while Harper still shook behind me. Not while Mom still clung to hope that this could end without violence. I unlocked the deadbolt but didn't open the door. Zenon. Harper whispered behind me, voice shaking, don't. I turned slightly, just enough to meet her eyes. I'm not doing this for him, I said. I'm doing it for us. Then I opened the door 2 inches. Damon stood on the porch, pale, trembling eyes ringed red like he hadn't slept in days. His hair was a mess, his clothes wrinkled, his hands shoved into his jacket pockets as if he didn't trust them not to shake. He looked nothing like the man who swaggered into our lives months ago, nothing like the man who bragged at dinners, nothing like the man who tried to control Harper. He looked broken, but not harmless. Thank you, he exhaled, shoulders dropping. I needed to see you. The porch light flickered above us. The house behind me held its breath. And then Damon said something that made every instinct in my body ignite like flame. There's something you don't know, Zenon. Something bigger than the loans. And if you don't hear me out, someone else is going to get hurt. I stepped back, not out of fear, but because the ground beneath this story suddenly shifted. What are you talking about? I asked. But Damon didn't answer. He just looked past me into the house, into the life he'd lost, and whispered, it wasn't all my idea. And that was when the hallway light behind us flickered. The same way the porch light had. As if someone else somewhere had just stepped into the story. The night split open, and I knew with absolute certainty Damon wasn't the final problem. He was only the beginning. Damon's words hung in the cold night air, heavy enough to bend it. It wasn't all my idea. For a second, the world narrowed into a single point, the space between the half-open door and Damon's hollow stare. Something inside him flickered, a mixture of fear and relief, like confessing that one sentence had finally loosened the rope tightening around his neck. Behind me, Mom whisper pleaded, Zenon, shut the door. Harper's breath hitched like she couldn't get air. But I didn't shut the door. Not yet. Not when Damon's voice carried the weight of a truth deeper than his lies, and darker than everything he'd done so far. I stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind me. Not locking it, just enough to shield Mom and Harper from whatever this was about to become. Damon rubbed his face hard, dragging his hands down until his cheeks looked flushed and raw. "You weren't supposed to get involved," he muttered. "You were supposed to stay away. That's why you told Mom to keep me out of Thanksgiving," I finished. He flinched. "Yeah." The porch light buzzed above us, faint, unstable, like it was struggling to hold back the darkness. I crossed my arms. Who else is part of this? Stop circling. Just say it. Damon swallowed hard. His eyes darted toward the street, scanning the shadows as if expecting someone to step out. For a moment his voice dropped to a whisper. "They promised me help. They said if I signed on, the loans, the startup, everything would be covered. I pressed." He opened his mouth and then shut it, jaw clenching so tight I heard his teeth grind. "I can't say their name. I swear to God I can't. If I do..." His voice cracked. "They'll come after Harper." A surge of cold shot through me. "You're debt collectors." "No," he whispered. "Worse." A car rolled down the street at that exact second. Damon whipped around, stepping deeper into the shadows of the porch as if the headlights were searchlights. The car passed slowly, then disappeared around the corner. Only when it was gone did he breathe again. "Damon," I said firmly, "you need to start telling the truth. All of it. Because right now Harper thinks you're just a liar. But I'm starting to think you're something else." His voice trembled. "I'm not dangerous, Zenon. I'm not a monster. I just got in over my head. And they..." He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes froze over my shoulder. I didn't turn immediately. Years of instinct, business instinct, street instinct, survival instinct told me to wait, to listen, to watch Damon's face first. His pupils shrank. His posture snapped straight. His lips parted as if to warn me, but instead he whispered, terrified, "Oh God." Only then did I turn. Mom had opened the door behind me, just a crack. Just enough for her to see me. Just enough for Damon to see her. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't pleading for me to come back inside. She was staring at Damon the way someone stares at a nightmare they thought they'd escaped decades ago. Recognition, deep old paralyzing, flooded her face. Harper behind her noticed instantly. Mom's knuckles whitened on the doorframe. Her breath came shallow. She whispered something so soft I barely heard it. "It's happening again." Damon stumbled back. "What, no, Mrs. Reyes? I swear this isn't." But Mom wasn't looking at him. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking past both of us, through the porch light, through the darkness, through memories she had spent her entire life burying. I stepped toward her. "Mom." "What do you mean, again?" She blinked. And suddenly her eyes were wet, glassy, unfocused, like she was seeing not Damon, but a ghost wearing his shape. Harper touched her arm. "Mom, what's going on?" Mom shook her head, barely able to speak. "When your father died," she whispered, "there were people, calls, threats, debts he never told me about, men who came to the house, men who..." Her voice broke. "For years after, I thought I kept you both safe by staying quiet." Harper stiffened. I froze. Because in 30 years, Mom had never ever spoken about Dad like that. Damon stepped closer, desperately pleading. "I didn't know he had anything to do with..." "Please, you have to believe me, I didn't know until it was too late." Mom covered her mouth, shaking violently. And I understood now why she had believed Damon so easily, why she had feared conflict, why she tried to keep me away, why she collapsed the moment she saw the truth. Because this wasn't just about Harper's safety. This was about old trauma resurfacing, patterns repeating, shadows returning. "Mom," I said quietly, "who were the people Dad owed?" Her voice was raw, trembling. "A group. A private lender he trusted. They weren't what they seemed. They ruined him. They ruined everything. Damon lowered his head. They're still around, he said. Bigger now. Hidden better. I stepped off the porch, closing the distance between us. You're going to tell me their name. Damon's eyes filled with tears, not the manipulative kind, not the frantic kind. Real ones. If I do, he whispered, you'll be on their list too. I stared at him. Cold, calm, unwavering. Maybe I already am. Damon looked at me like that possibility had never occurred to him. And that was when he said it. The thing that would turn the entire night inside out, the thing that pulled my family into a darker truth than any of us were ready for. Zenon. Your father wasn't their only client. I went still. What are you talking about? He swallowed hard. They're not after me because of the loan. They're interested in your family because someone close to you, someone still alive, still owes them. The porch light flickered again. The air grew razor thin. Mom collapsed into the doorway, whispering, No, no, it can't be. Harper grabbed her, panicked. Mom, who? Who are they talking about? Mom didn't answer. She couldn't. Her face told the story before her lips moved. Damon pointed slowly, trembling, not toward me, not toward Harper, not toward the street. He pointed toward the house, toward the past, toward the one person we hadn't questioned, and he whispered a name that shattered the quiet, warm version of our family forever. Your uncle. The door swung wide open behind us. Mom screamed. Harper gasped. And I turned just in time to see a shadow step into our living room. The shadow stepped fully into the living room before any of us had time to breathe. Not a silhouette from the porch light, not a trick of the hallway lamp. A real person, a real presence, and one I had not seen in over 6 years. My uncle Rafael Reyes stood inside my mother's home, like he had never left, broad-shouldered, calm, strangely composed, his winter coat still zipped, snow melting along the hem and dripping onto the hardwood floor. Mom choked on a sob. Harper froze mid-motion, still clutching Mom's arm. Damon stepped back like he had been punched. I felt the entire room tilt, because Rafael wasn't just an uncle. He was the ghost we didn't talk about, the name no one said out loud. The man who vanished after my father died and left behind nothing but an empty workshop, a half-finished business partnership, and a string of unanswered questions we were all told to let go. And now he was here, in the doorway, at 3 a.m. on Thanksgiving night. Close the door, Rafael said quietly. Mom obeyed instantly, like muscle memory, like the good years before everything went wrong had reached out and seized control. I stepped in front of her. What are you doing here? Rafael's eyes scanned the room, not hostile, not warm, but calculating. Mom, Harper, me, and finally, Damon. His jaw tightened when he saw Damon trembling against the wall. So this is the one who talked. Damon flinched. I didn't say their name, I swear. Rafael held up a hand and Damon went completely silent. Mom whispered, voice breaking, Rafael, please tell me this isn't what I think it is. He didn't answer her. He answered me. You've been asking the wrong questions, Zenon. You've been looking at the wrong man. I didn't move. Then tell me the right ones. Rafael stepped further into the room, shutting the door behind him. His presence filled the house like a storm front, quiet, suffocating, inevitable. You want the truth, he asked softly. Then sit. None of us sat. But he continued anyway. Your father didn't fall into debt on his own, Rafael said. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't careless. He didn't gamble the business away like everyone told you. Mom cupped a hand over her mouth, crying silently. Rafael kept going. He spoke like a man carrying a weight so old it no longer hurt, only hardened. We went in together, he said. A partnership. To take a contract bigger than our company had ever handled. We needed upfront capital fast. Traditional banks wouldn't do it. So I found a private lender, a group with money, few questions, and interest rates that looked reasonable if you didn't know what sat behind them. Damon whispered, I told you. But Rafael ignored him. When the project collapsed, Rafael continued. The penalties doubled, then tripled. Your father couldn't pay. And when they realized he couldn't, they turned to me. Harper blinked through tears. But you disappeared. Raphael nodded once. To protect you, to keep them away. I stepped forward. Then why are you here now? Raphael's eyes sharpened. Because they didn't stop. They never do. They found new ways to make their money, new ways to control people, new faces to recruit. His gaze flicked to Damon, brief cold. Your sister's husband got caught in the modern version of the trap. And the moment he mentioned your family name, he looked at me. They remembered we still owed. Mom collapsed into the nearest chair. Harper covered her mouth with both hands. I didn't blink. Raphael hesitated for the first time, not out of fear, out of regret. They call themselves the Meridian Circle now, he finally said. A private lending network. Clean on paper, invisible in court, untouchable in business. They own debt portfolios across half the western states. If they want you, they get you. He exhaled heavily. But Damon wasn't just a client. He was a pawn. Someone they used to get close enough to your family to reopen the account your father died trying to close. Damon shook his head in panic. I didn't know who they were at first. They said it was a startup incubator private capital growth mentorship. I didn't know until I asked for more money. Then the threats started. I swear to God, I didn't know. Mom glared at him through tears. And you still tried to drag Harper in. Damon collapsed to his knees. I thought if I could get one loan under her name, I could pay them off and they'd leave us alone. I didn't know they were after your family. I didn't know Zenon would see the documents. I didn't think. No, Raphael said coldly. You didn't think. That's why you're standing here now. A long, suffocating silence followed. Then Raphael turned to me fully, shoulders squared, voice quiet but firm. You need to understand something, Zenon. The moment you opened Damon's file, the moment you blocked his loan application, the moment you confronted him at your office, you stepped onto their radar. I felt the weight of it drop into my chest. The cold, deliberate truth. I asked the only question that mattered. What do they want? Now Raphael didn't blink. They want leverage. He pointed to me. To get to me. He pointed to Damon. To keep him silent. He pointed toward the staircase where Harper stood shaking. And to make sure your family owes them again. Mom sobbed harder. Why didn't you tell us? Raphael's voice softened with pain. I had never heard from him before. Because silence saved you once. I hoped it would save you again. I inhaled slowly, forcing myself to think, process, analyze like I did in boardrooms, not living rooms. What happens now? Raphael's jaw tightened. They'll come. Harper whimpered. Mom gasped. Not tonight, he added. But soon. They'll ask Damon why the signature disappeared, why the loan stalled, why the family suddenly knows. He looked directly at me. And when they realize the reason is you, they'll test you first. Professionally. Financially. Then personally. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't blink. Because deep down I already knew it. Raphael took one step closer, lowering his voice until only I could hear. They're coming for Silvergate's next development proposal. My blood ran cold. Skyline expansion. He nodded. They want control of the land rights. And they'll burn you down before they let you stand in their way. A chill shot through my spine. Everything clicked. Everything aligned. The timeline. Damon's desperation. The pressure, the fear. The shadows from the past. The sudden interest in private investors. Mom whispered, trembling, Zenon, what are we going to do? I lifted my eyes slowly, landing on each of them in turn. My mother broken but brave. My sister terrified but finally awake. And Damon ruined but truthful for the first time. Then I looked at Raphael, a man who had run for years but wasn't running anymore. And I felt something shift in my chest, not fear, not panic, but clarity. I'm not letting them get near our family, I said quietly. And I'm not letting them touch my company. Raphael nodded once. Then you'll need help. Mine. Mom finally whispered what we were all thinking. Will we be safe? Raphael didn't answer. Not immediately. Instead, he walked to the front window, pulled the curtain aside 2 inches, and stared into the dark street. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, measured, deadly certain. They already know we're awake. And in that exact moment, as if the night itself responded, a black SUV rolled slowly down the street, its headlights off its engine, quiet, its windows impossible to see through. It didn't stop. It didn't honk. It didn't turn. It simply passed by the house, slow enough to watch, slow enough to be seen, slow enough to promise something without saying a word. When it disappeared around the corner, Raphael let the curtain fall. No one spoke. No one moved. Because we all understood the same thing at the same time. Thanksgiving was over, and the real war had just begun. The black SUV didn't come back that night, but its shadow stayed in the house long after dawn scraped across the windows. No one slept. Not me. Not Mom. Not Harper. Even Damon, who sat slumped in a chair like a man waiting for a sentence, shook every time a car passed outside. By sunrise, the world looked the same, but nothing felt familiar anymore. Thanksgiving had ended with a warm table. The day after began with the quiet knowledge that we were being watched. Raphael stayed by the window, arms crossed, eyes colder than I ever remembered. He didn't look like an uncle anymore. He looked like a man who had carried a secret war on his back for more than a decade and was furious he had to drag us into it now. "We're running out of time," he finally said. "They'll make their move soon." Mom's voice cracked. "What do they want?" Raphael turned to me instead of her. "They want control of the land, of the project, of your name. They believe Silvergate's next development can triple their assets if they get in first. But you blocked Damon. You exposed their angle. So now they'll come at the one thing they think they can break." "Me," I said. He nodded. I felt Harper's hand slip into mine, not in fear but apology. "Zenon, you shouldn't have to deal with this alone." For the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to feel the weight of everything, the years of being misunderstood, the silence that shaped me. The distance my family placed between us, not out of cruelty, but because they never truly knew who I was or what I carried. And now they saw it, clear as glass. I squeezed Harper's hand back. "I'm not alone. Not anymore." That seemed to steady her. But Damon was a different story. He looked smaller somehow, his shoulders hunched, guilt clinging to him like smoke. "I never meant for it to go this far," he whispered. I didn't respond. Not because I hated him, but because forgiveness was a luxury none of us could afford yet. Instead, I faced Raphael. "What's our next move?" He studied me as if deciding whether to tell me the truth or shield me like Mom had tried to for years. Then he said, "You call your board. You reveal the pattern behind the failed bids on Skyline. Meridian Circle has been quietly approaching your junior directors. They want inside access. If you move before they do, you'll cut off every route they planned." And my family, Raphael, hesitated. "They'll be safe once the Circle knows you aren't leverage. They can't use fear against someone who refuses to bend." It was the closest thing to reassurance he could give. I grabbed my coat. "Then let's end it." Mom looked terrified. "Where are you going to Silvergate?" I said. "To clean up the mess before it reaches us." Harper stood. "Zen and wait." I turned back. "Harper, you don't have to worry anymore. No one's ever signing anything in your name again." Her eyes filled. "I didn't believe you. I pushed you away. I made it so easy for him to make you the villain." "You were trying to protect your life," I said quietly. "I was trying to protect you. We just didn't say it out loud." She hugged me tight, desperate, sincere. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like a duty. It felt like family. I left while the sun was barely a pale line behind the mountains. The office was mostly empty by the time I reached Silvergate. Holiday staffing meant a quiet building, but not quiet enough. 2 men in dark suits were already waiting near the elevators. They did not belong there. Their posture was too still, their eyes too alert, their jackets too fitted around shapes that looked a lot like shoulder holsters. As soon as they saw me, they straightened. I kept walking. One of them stepped forward. "Mr. Reyes, I didn't break stride. Not today. Sir, we have a business inquiry about Skyline. If Meridian Circle wants to talk, I said, pressing the elevator button, tell them they should have come to me before they tried to ruin my family. The man's expression twitched, just enough for me to know I was right. The elevator opened. I stepped in. Neither man followed, because they understood now. I wasn't prey. Not anymore. My board gathered within the hour. Executives called in from Holmes Airport's hotel breakfasts, and I told them everything. Not about my family, not the personal parts, but about Meridian Circle's predatory lending, the shell investors who'd tried to slip into our private funding pipeline, the fraudulent holdings tied to Damon's application. I showed them the pattern of attempted buy-ins, the unnatural interest in Skyline, the red flags and compliance reports no one had connected before. And when I finished, the room was silent. Then my chairman, who had known me since my first day at Silvergate, leaned forward and said, "Reyes, you just saved us." It wasn't praise. It was recognition. We voted within minutes to restrict all private capital access, freeze pending applications, and report suspicious inquiries to the State Commerce Commission. Meridian Circle's window closed in one strike. The war wasn't over, but the game had changed. That night when I pulled into Mom's driveway, the house finally looked calm again. Lights warm, curtains open, no dark cars watching from the street. Raphael was on the porch, arms crossed, but a faint nod told me enough we were safe. For now. Mom stepped outside as soon as I reached the steps. Her face was tired, but her eyes, lighter. "I'm proud of you," she said softly. It was the first time I remembered hearing those words from her. Harper appeared behind her. "Is it done for now?" I replied. "They won't touch you. Or Mom." Harper exhaled with relief so deep it seemed to deflate years of fear all at once. Then she whispered something she had held too long. "Zenon, thank you for showing up, even when we told you not to." I smiled, small and real. That's what family is for. Later, as I drove home, the city glowing like a quiet promise around me, I realized something I didn't win today. Not in the traditional sense. There were no trophies, no applause, no victory march. But I protected the people who once pushed me out. I stood my ground against a shadow bigger than myself. I became the person I needed to be, not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. And as the skyline of Denver rose in front of me, I understood something I had never been brave enough to admit. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't power, isn't victory, isn't forcing anyone to apologize. Sometimes the greatest revenge is becoming the protector they never expected and the man they can finally trust. I wasn't the problem. I never had been. But I had become the answer. And that more than anything Meridian Circle could threaten was something no one could ever take away from me. The story didn't end with fear. It ended with family. And with me at the table where I